On the gleaming orbital platform of the Galactic Concord, high above the swirling blues and whites of a distant gas giant, Daniel Hayes stood alone. Around him, the chamber hummed with the low thrum of alien machinery and the rustle of dozens of species shifting in their seats. The Council of 12 Species had gathered to pass judgment, and humanity's fate hung in the balance. Daniel wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, its only adornment a small silver pin shaped like a globe. His hands were steady, his voice calm, though his heart pounded like a drum in his chest. He had come here not as a warrior, but as a bridge. For years, Earth had sought peaceful integration into the galactic community. Trade routes had opened. Cultural exchanges had begun. Human scientists had even helped repair a failing atmospheric processor on the Myrelian homeworld. But now everything teetered on the edge of collapse. The charge against him, and by extension, all of humanity, was grave. Violation of the Prime Accord through the unauthorized use of bioweapons on the neutral moon of Keswick 7. The moon, once a quiet research outpost shared by 5 species, now lay quarantined, its surface scarred by strange fungal blooms that consumed organic matter with terrifying speed. Daniel knew the truth. Earth had sent no weapons. In fact, a human medical team had been on Keswick 7 studying a rare mineral that showed promise in treating neural decay. When the outbreak began, they'd tried to contain it, even sacrificing their own shuttle to seal off the infected sector. But someone had twisted the story. Surveillance logs showed human vessels deploying canisters. Biological traces matched Earth's genetic archives. The evidence, though damning, was wrong. Deeply wrong. "The data has been altered," Daniel said, his voice carrying clearly through the translator field that wrapped the chamber. "Our team was there to help, not to harm. We request access to the raw sensor logs from the Keswick orbital array. Independent analysis will prove our innocence." From the high dais, the Velnari representative, a tall, armored figure with obsidian-black carapace and glowing red eyes, let out a low hiss. "The logs have been verified by 3 neutral arbiters," it said, its voice like grinding stone. "Your species hides behind words while your weapons spread death. The accord is clear. Bioweapons are forbidden. You broke it." Daniel turned to face the other envoys, some avian, some reptilian, some made of shimmering light contained in force fields. He searched their faces, or what passed for faces, for a flicker of doubt, of fairness, but most avoided his gaze. Fear had taken root. Humanity had grown too fast, too bold. In just 2 centuries, Earth had gone from a single-planet society to a presence in 7 star systems. Their ships were faster. Their AI was smarter. Their soldiers, though few, fought with terrifying coordination. To many on the council, Daniel wasn't just an envoy. He was a symbol of something they couldn't control. A small, moth-like delegate from the Zorathi Collective fluttered its wings nervously. Perhaps there is room for further inquiry," it whispered through its translator. "The human has always been truthful in past dealings." The Velnari slammed a clawed fist on the arm of its seat. "Truth? They rewrote the truth on Keswick 7. They must be made an example. If we show weakness now, others will follow. Chaos will return." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. This wasn't about justice. It was about sending a message. And he was the message. President Lena Ortiz had warned him before he left Earth. "They're scared of us, Daniel," she'd said, her eyes tired but sharp. "Don't give them a reason to act on that fear." He hadn't. He'd followed every protocol, filed every report, shared every finding. Yet here he stood, condemned by lies wrapped in official seals. The presiding judge, an ancient Myrelian elder whose translucent skin pulsed with soft blue light, raised a webbed hand. Silence fell. "Ambassador Hayes," it said, its voice slow and heavy like ocean tides, "you have been found in violation of Article 9 of the Prime Accord. The penalty is immediate termination. Do you have final words?" Daniel took a deep breath. He thought of his sister back in Colorado, of the students he'd taught at the Lunar Diplomatic Academy, of the quiet hope that had carried humanity to the stars. He would not beg. He would not rage. But he would speak. "Earth did not do this," he said, his voice steady. "But even if you choose not to believe me, remember this. We do not seek conquest. We seek understanding. Killing me will not make you safer. It will only prove that fear has won, And when fear rules the galaxy, no one is safe, not even you. He paused, then added softly, "Tell my people." "I tried," the elder nodded. Two armored enforcers, hulking brutes from the Qatari species, stepped forward. Energy binders snapped around Daniel's wrists, humming with blue light. He didn't resist. As they led him from the chamber, he caught one last glimpse of the stars through the observation dome. Beautiful, endless, full of possibilities that now felt out of reach. His final transmission, sent through a hidden channel in his wrist comm before the binders disabled it, reached Earth in under 3 minutes. It carried no coordinates, no battle plans, just his voice calm and clear. "They fear what they don't understand. Protect our people." The execution was swift. In a sterile chamber deep within the Concorde station, a neural disruptor pulse silenced his mind in an instant. No pain, no drama, just silence, but the broadcast of his death was anything but silent. Across human colonies, from Mars to Proxima Centauri b, screens lit up with the image of Daniel Hayes standing tall, then falling. Grief turned to anger. Anger turned to resolve. On Earth, crowds gathered in city squares, not with torches, but with clenched fists and quiet tears. In military bunkers beneath the Rockies and the Himalayas, officers stared at the footage and whispered one word: never again. The Galactic Council believed they had crushed a threat. They had not. They had lit a fuse. And humanity, long underestimated, long dismissed as emotional and chaotic, would now show the galaxy what it truly meant to be human, not through rage, but through unwavering defense of their own. The stars would remember Daniel Hayes, and they would soon learn to fear the species that mourned him. Back on Earth, the sky was clear over Geneva. The sun shone through the tall windows of the Unified Earth Command headquarters, but inside, the air felt heavy. President Lena Ortiz sat at the head of a long table, her face pale but composed. Around her, the top leaders of Earth's defense and intelligence branches waited in silence. The broadcast of Daniel Hayes' execution had ended just hours ago, and the room still hummed with the echo of his final words. Admiral Cole Briggs stood near the wall, arms crossed. His uniform was crisp, but his eyes were tired. He had known Daniel since the early days of the Mars Accord. General Mara Finch sat with her hands folded, her sharp gaze fixed on the president. Fleet strategist Eli Vance tapped a stylus against his datapad. Though his usual calm had cracked, he kept glancing at the live feed from the public squares, where crowds grew larger by the minute. "We can't let this stand," Briggs said finally, his voice low but firm. "If we do nothing, they'll think we're weak. They'll come for our colonies next." Finch nodded. "The Velnari have been pushing for this for years. They see us as upstarts. Daniel's death wasn't justice, it was a warning shot." Vance looked up. "Diplomatic channels are already jammed. The Zorathi sent a message of regret. The Myrelians claim they were outvoted. But no one is offering real accountability. They expect us to accept this and move on." President Ortiz leaned forward, her fingers steepled. "And what do our people want?" Briggs didn't hesitate. "Justice. Not revenge. There's a difference." Outside, the streets told a different story. In New Delhi, Rio, Nairobi, and Chicago, people held vigils. Some shouted for war. Others wept. But all shared the same feeling: betrayal. Humanity had played by the rules. They had shared technology, sent aid, opened their doors. And in return, they got a bullet in the dark. Ortiz stood and walked to the window. Below, the city moved as usual. Cars, drones, children walking home from school. Normal life. But she knew it wouldn't last. The galaxy had just drawn a line, and Earth stood on the wrong side of it. "Show me the intel," she said. Vance pulled up a holographic display. Red markers blinked across a star map. "The Velnari hegemony controls 17 systems along our border. Their fleet strength is triple ours on paper, but their command structure is rigid. They rely on centralized control. One breach and the whole network stutters." Finch added, "Their colonies are spread thin. They've been expanding fast, just like us. But they don't have our redundancy. No backup grids. No hidden shipyards." Briggs stepped closer. "We've been preparing for this moment longer than they know. Project Ironbloom, those stealth yards in the Kuiper Belt, they're ready. We can launch within 72 hours. Ortiz turned. 72 hours to decide whether we start a war that could end us. "No," Vance said quietly. "Not a war. A statement." The room fell silent again. The weight of the decision pressed down like gravity. If Earth struck back, it would confirm every fear the Council had about humanity. Unpredictable, violent, dangerous. But if they did nothing, they'd be seen as easy prey. Other species might join the Velnari, sensing weakness. Colonies would fall. Billions could die. That night, Ortiz didn't sleep. She walked the quiet halls of the presidential residence, replaying Daniel's last message in her mind. Protect our people. Not avenge me, not destroy them, protect. That was the key. By dawn, she had her answer. She called the emergency session back together. The same faces, but now with deeper lines of worry. She didn't sit at the head of the table this time. She stood in the center. We will not beg, she said. We will not bargain. And we will not bleed quietly. She looked at Briggs. Activate Protocol Omega. A sharp intake of breath filled the room. Protocol Omega, extermination protocol, was the last resort. Not a declaration of war, but a standing order. Any force that threatens human sovereignty will be neutralized. No warnings, no negotiations. Total defense executed with precision. Finch's eyes widened slightly. Madam President, that protocol authorizes autonomous response. It could escalate beyond control. It already has, Ortiz replied. They executed our envoy on false charges. They think we're animals who don't understand law or honor. Let them learn what happens when you corner a species that values its own. Vance began typing rapidly. I'll reconfigure the Sentinel network. Redirect all deep space drones to border sectors. Prep the Harmony drives for silent deployment. Briggs gave a single nod. The fleet will be ready. Over the next 2 days, Earth moved like a ghost. No public announcements. No fiery speeches. Just quiet, relentless preparation. Factories on Luna shifted output from civilian to military. AI cores and orbital stations ran millions of combat simulations. Families on the outer colonies received coded alerts. Prepare for extended comms blackout. Maintain readiness. The public didn't know the details, but they felt the shift. The mood changed from grief to grim determination. In schools, teachers spoke of unity. In bars, veterans checked their old service tags. Even children stopped playing war games and started building models of defense grids. Then came the final piece of intelligence. A smuggled data chip, delivered by a Qatari trader who'd risked his life to get it off the Concord station. It contained the unaltered logs from Keswick 7. Clear proof that the bio-outbreak had come from a Velnari research vessel that had crashed weeks before the human team arrived. The Velnari had covered it up, then framed Earth to justify their own fear. Ortiz watched the footage alone. The Velnari ship half buried in moon dust, the fungal strain matching their genetic markers. The timestamp 10 days before humans landed. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She simply closed the file and said one word to her aide. Now. That evening, a message went out to every human military post, every colony governor, every civilian defense coordinator. It was short. No embellishment. Just facts. Daniel Hayes was innocent. The Velnari hegemony lied. Protocol Omega is active as of 000 hour Sol Standard. All units hold position until engagement parameters are met. Protect our people. Across the solar system, lights blinked on in hidden bunkers. Ships powered up in silence. AI minds awoke from standby, their directives clear. The galaxy expected Earth to scream, to rage, to charge blindly into battle. Instead, humanity went quiet, and in that silence, something far more dangerous began to stir. The Velnari, watching from their command posts, saw no fleet mobilizing. No angry broadcasts. They assumed Earth had backed down. They celebrated. They began planning their next move. How to absorb human colonies into their empire, how to dismantle Earth's shipyards, how to rewrite history so Daniel Hayes would be remembered as a war criminal. They did not see the drones already drifting near their relay stations. They did not hear the faint hum of Harmony drives folding space just beyond sensor range. They did not know that humanity's greatest weapon was not fire or steel, but patience, and patience, when paired with purpose, could be more terrifying than any bomb. President Ortiz stood once more at the window, this time under a moonless sky. She thought of Daniel. She hoped he would understand. They weren't becoming monsters. They were becoming guardians, because in a galaxy that respected only strength, sometimes the only way to protect peace was to make war unthinkable, and Earth was about to make it very, very unthinkable. The first strike came not with fire, but with silence. On the edge of Velnari-controlled space, Relay Station K9 hummed as it always had, routing messages between patrol fleets and command hubs. Its crew of 12, 8 Velnari, 3 Myrelians, and 1 bored Zarathi technician, drank nutrient paste and swapped dull stories. None noticed the 3 small objects drifting near the station's solar array. They looked like space debris, just another piece of junk from centuries of galactic traffic. Then, without warning, the station's lights flickered. Comms went dead. Life support stuttered. Alarms blared for 3 seconds before falling silent. The crew scrambled, checking panels, shouting into dead mics. By the time they realized their external sensors were blind, it was too late. The objects weren't debris. They were silent sentinels, human-made drones no larger than a cargo crate coated in light-bending alloy, powered by cold fusion cells that left no heat trail. Their mission was simple: disable, not destroy. Within minutes, they'd latched onto the station's main data conduit and injected a logic virus that rewrote the relay's core programming. The station didn't explode. It just stopped talking. Across the border, 6 more relays went dark in the same hour. No explosions. No distress calls. Just silence. On the bridge of the Velnari command cruiser, Iron Maw, Fleet Marshal Vorik stared at his blank tactical display. "What is this?" he growled, his claws digging into the armrests. "System failure?" "No, sir," replied a junior officer, voice trembling. "All border relays are offline. We've lost contact with patrol groups Delta and Theta," Vorik snarled. "Impossible. Human ships would be detected light years out. But there were no human ships. Not yet." While the Velnari scrambled, humanity struck again, this time deeper, hidden in the asteroid fields near the hegemony's outer colonies. Retrofitted freighters powered up their Harmony drives. These weren't warships. They looked like civilian haulers, registered to fake corporations, their transponders broadcasting harmless cargo manifests. But inside, they carried drone swarms and signal jammers. Captain Nora Bell watched from the cockpit of the Wayfarer, her hands resting lightly on the controls. She wasn't a soldier by training. She'd been a deep space surveyor before Protocol Omega activated, but she knew every bolt of her ship. Beside her, Colonel Jake Ruiz monitored the drone feed, his face lit by soft green light. "Sentinels deployed," he said. "Relay 7 is down. They won't know what hit them." Nora nodded. "Keep it clean. No kills unless fired upon. We're not here to start a war. We're here to end one before it begins." Her words carried the new doctrine of Earth's response. Precision, not punishment. Every action had a purpose. Every target served a strategic goal. Disable communications, blind sensors, cut supply lines, make the hegemony feel like it was fighting shadows. The Velnari, used to blunt force warfare, had no answer. Their fleets were massive, their armor thick, their weapons powerful, but they were slow. They needed clear orders from Central Command. Without relays, without data, they were blind giants swinging at ghosts. Then came the real surprise. A Velnari scout ship patrolling near the dead relay K9 detected a faint energy signature. It moved closer, scanners active. What it found was a single human shuttle, drifting with engines off. No weapons, no shields. Just a small craft with a blinking distress beacon. The Velnari captain ordered it boarded. Inside, they found nothing but a data core. Curious, they plugged it into their system. Instantly, their ship's AI froze. Navigation failed. Weapons locked. Life support cycled into emergency mode. The data core wasn't a trap, it was a teacher. It contained a copy of the same logic virus used on the relays, but refined. It learned from the ship's own systems, adapting in real time. Within minutes, the scout ship was helpless, drifting in silence. Back on Earth, Eli Vance watched the feed with quiet satisfaction. "They keep underestimating our software," he murmured. "They think hardware wins wars, but information is the real weapon." The campaign continued like this for weeks. Human forces never engaged in open battle. They didn't need to. They slipped through the cracks in the hegemony's defenses, exploiting every weakness, turning the Velnari's own technology against them. Then came the day the Velnari finally saw the truth. A high-ranking hegemony admiral reviewed the logs from the captured scout ship. He saw how the virus had spread, not by brute force but by mimicry. It copied the ship's voice, its protocols, its very identity. It didn't break the system. It became the system. "They're not attacking us," he whispered to his staff. "They're replacing us." Panic spread through the hegemony command. Ships refused to share data. Fleets operated in isolation. Colonies sealed their ports, fearing human infiltrators. Trust, once the backbone of their military, began to rot, and still, no human warships appeared until they did. One morning, the Velnari early warning net, what was left of it, detected a fleet emerging from fold space near the mining world of Xylos. Not thousands of ships, just 47. But each one bore the Silver Earth sigil and moved with eerie coordination. Captain Nora Bell led the formation. Her orders were clear: demonstrate capability, not cruelty. The Velnari garrison on Xylos scrambled fighters. They launched missiles. They opened fire with plasma cannons. The human fleet didn't return fire. Instead, they released a pulse, a low-frequency resonance wave tuned to the neural implants every Velnari officer used to control their ships. The wave didn't harm flesh. It didn't melt metal. It simply scrambled the link between mind and machine. Across the battlefield, Velnari ships froze. Pilots screamed as their controls went dead. Commanders lost connection to their crews. The entire defense grid collapsed in under 30 seconds. Nora's voice crackled over open channel, calm and clear. "This is Captain Bell of Earth. Stand down. We do not wish to kill you, but we will not be threatened." No one answered. The Velnari were too stunned. The human fleet held position for exactly 10 minutes. Then, as silently as they arrived, they folded space and vanished. Back on Earth, people watched the footage in awe. Not because of the weapons, but because of the restraint. Humanity had shown it could win without bloodshed, but the message was clear. Next time, there might not be a warning. The Velnari hegemony, once proud and unshakable, now trembled. They had expected savages. They got strategists. They had expected rage. They got resolve. And in the quiet that followed, the galaxy began to understand. Earth wasn't the threat. The real threat was underestimating Earth. The silence after the Xylos demonstration lasted only 3 days. On the 4th morning, the Galactic Council chamber, once a symbol of unity, was empty except for a handful of delegates huddled in corners, whispering like frightened children. The Velnari hegemony had stopped answering calls. Their fleets were scattered, their command structure fractured. Panic had spread like a virus through their ranks, and now it was leaking into the rest of the galaxy. The Zorathi ambassador, wings folded tight against its body, sent a formal message to Earth. It offered reparations, rare minerals, open trade routes, even a seat on their planetary council. The Morellians followed, their watery voices trembling over the comms as they pleaded for peace. They claimed they had been pressured, misled, forced to vote against Daniel Hayes by Velnari threats. Earth did not reply, not out of pride, but principle. President Lena Ortiz had made it clear. Words meant nothing without action. If the galaxy wanted peace, it had to prove it. Then came the data shard, smuggled out of the Concord station by a Qatari aide who had admired Daniel Hayes. The shard contained his final logs, unedited, unfiltered. It showed him arguing with the council, presenting evidence, begging for fairness. It showed the Velnari delegate deleting key files when no one was looking. It showed the Morellian elder hesitating before casting the final vote, eyes full of regret. When Earth released the footage, the galaxy watched in stunned silence. Protests erupted on non-human worlds. Zorathi students marched through crystal cities holding signs that read, "Truth for Hayes." Morellian elders gathered in underwater halls, demanding their leaders step down. Even among the Velnari, dissent grew. Low-ranking officers questioned why they were dying for a lie. The council, once mighty, began to crumble from within, but the Velnari High Command refused to surrender. Humiliated and cornered, they chose desperation over dignity. From the deepest vaults of their homeworld, they awakened the Sunder Fleet, a relic armada built during the ancient wars, powered by stolen technology from a long-dead race. The ships were massive, their hulls lined with energy-dampening alloy, their weapons capable of cracking planets. They believed this would be their salvation. They were wrong. The Sunder Fleet launched with fanfare, its arrival broadcast across every channel the Velnari still controlled. They called it the Final Judgment. They promised to burn Earth's colonies to ash and turn Sol into a dead system. Humanity did not panic. In hidden bunkers beneath the ice of Europa and the dust of Ceres, fleet strategist Eli Vance studied the Sunderfleet's specs. He saw their strength, their armor, their firepower, but also their fatal flaw. Like all Velnari warships, they relied on neural-linked command systems. Every officer, every pilot, every gunner was connected through implants that allowed instant coordination. It made them fast. It also made them vulnerable. Vance turned to his team. They think bigger means better, but the bigger the network, the harder it falls. He activated Project Echo. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a frequency, a resonance wave tuned not to destroy but to disrupt. Based on the same principle used at Xylos but amplified 1,000-fold. It wouldn't harm living tissue. It would only sever the link between Velnari minds and their machines. The trap was set. When the Sunder fleet entered the Sol system, they expected resistance. They found none. No ships, no mines, no orbital defenses, just empty space and the quiet glow of Earth in the distance. Confused, the Velnari admiral ordered a full scan. That was their mistake. The moment their sensors pinged Earth's outer satellites, the signal bounced back not as data but as a carrier wave. The echo frequency flooded the fleet. On every bridge, in every cockpit, Velnari officers screamed as their implants overloaded. Not with pain, but with silence. The neural link snapped. Suddenly they were alone. No shared thoughts, no instant orders, just individuals in massive, complex machines they could no longer control. The Sunder fleet froze. Ships drifted into each other. Weapons powered down. Life support flickered. The mighty armada became a graveyard of metal, floating helplessly in the void. Captain Nora Bell watched from the bridge of the Wayfarer, now part of Earth's defensive perimeter. She felt no joy, only sorrow. They didn't have to do this, she said softly. Colonel Jake Ruiz stood beside her. They chose fear over truth. That's on them. Earth sent rescue shuttles, not to fight but to offer aid. They docked with disabled Velnari vessels, delivered medical supplies, and broadcast a simple message in every known language. Lay down your arms. You will not be harmed. Some Velnari fired on the shuttles out of pride. Most did not. One by one, the ships powered down. Crews surrendered. The war was over before it truly began. Back on Earth, President Ortiz addressed the world. She stood in front of the memorial being built for Daniel Hayes, her voice calm but firm. We did not seek this fight, she said, but we will not let lies dictate our future. From this day forward, Earth stands not as a threat, but as a promise we will protect our own, and we will demand honesty from those who share the stars with us. The galaxy listened. The Zorathi sent a delegation to Geneva. The Myrelians opened their archives for full review. Even former Velnari officers, stripped of rank but spared execution, spoke out against their old leaders. The council was dissolved, not by force but by choice. Its members admitted it had failed, not just humanity but all species, and in its place something new began to form. Not an empire, not a federation, but a charter, the Sol Accords drafted by human diplomats, reviewed by alien scholars. It laid out one simple rule. No species may act against another without proof, and no judgment may be passed without fairness. It was not perfect, but it was a start. As the first copies were signed in orbit above Earth, Captain Nora Bell looked up at the stars and thought of Daniel. He hadn't died for nothing. He had died for this, a galaxy that might one day learn to trust again, and humanity, once feared as reckless and wild, was now seen for what it truly was, steady, just, and unbreakable when defending what was right. Years passed and the stars grew quieter. The memorial on the old Concord station had become a place of pilgrimage, not just for humans but for Zorathi scholars, Myrelian elders, even former Velnari officers who came to lay down their old insignias in silence. At its center stood a simple statue of Daniel Hayes, not in uniform, but in civilian clothes, one hand outstretched as if offering a handshake. Around him, the names of all who died on Keswick 7 were etched in stone, human and alien alike. Captain Nora Bell visited often. She had retired from active duty, trading her command chair for a teaching post at the Lunar Diplomatic Academy. Today she walked the memorial path with a group of young cadets, boys and girls from Earth, Mars, and the Proxima colonies, their eyes wide with curiosity. Why didn't we take over after we won? Asked a boy from Titan, his voice small but earnest. Nora stopped and looked at him. Because winning isn't about owning. It's about making sure no one else has to lose like we did. She led them to the edge of the observation deck, where the stars stretched endlessly. The galaxy used to think humans were loud, messy, and dangerous. They saw our history, our wars, our mistakes, and assumed we'd bring that chaos to the stars. But we showed them something else. We showed them that strength isn't just in weapons. It's in restraint, in truth, in protecting your own without becoming the monster they feared. The cadets listened, silent. Back on Earth, life had returned to a kind of peace, but not the old kind. The world was different now. People spoke more carefully. Leaders thought longer before acting. Children learned not just math and science, but ethics and interstellar law. The memory of Daniel Hayes was not just a wound, but a lesson. President Lena Ortiz had stepped down after 2 terms as the law required. She lived quietly in the mountains of Colorado, tending a small garden and writing memoirs she swore would never be published. But every year, on the anniversary of Daniel's death, she visited his sister and sat with her in silence, sharing tea and memories. The Sol Accords had grown. Dozens of species had signed on, not because they feared Earth, but because they trusted its word. Trade flourished. Joint research stations orbited distant suns. Human doctors worked alongside Morellian healers. Zarathi engineers helped rebuild Velnari cities not as conquerors but as neighbors. And Earth? Earth watched, not with suspicion but with care. The silent sentinels still drifted in the dark, not as weapons but as guardians. The Harmony drives remained ready, not for war but for rescue. Protocol Omega had not been revoked, but its meaning had changed. It was no longer a threat. It was a promise. Harm our people and you will face consequences. But seek peace and you will find friends. One evening, Nora stood alone at the memorial. The station lights dimmed for night cycle, casting long shadows across the stone. She placed a small earth flower, a blue cornflower, at the base of Daniel's statue. It would not last long in the sterile air, but it was the thought that mattered. She remembered the day they launched the first counterstrike. The fear, the anger, the terrible weight of knowing that lives would be lost even in defense, but also the clarity, the certainty that some lines must never be crossed. A soft chime sounded behind her. She turned to see a young Velnari woman in civilian robes, her carapace polished but unadorned. She carried no weapons, only a data slate. "I came to thank you," the woman said, her translator voice gentle. "My father was on the Sunder fleet. He survived because your shuttles came. He told me humans could have killed us all, but you chose not to." Nora nodded. "We fight to protect, not to punish." The Velnari bowed slightly. "My people are learning, slowly, but we are learning." They stood together for a while, 2 former enemies beneath the same stars. No words were needed. Later, as Nora boarded her shuttle back to Luna, she looked out the viewport one last time. The memorial glowed softly against the black. Around it, ships from a dozen species moved in calm traffic. No weapons charged, no shields raised. Just vessels going about their business in a galaxy that was finally learning to breathe. On Earth, children played in parks under open skies. Farmers harvested crops under twin suns on distant colonies. Scientists shared discoveries across species lines. And in classrooms everywhere, teachers told the story of Daniel Hayes, not as a martyr, but as a man who believed in fairness until his last breath. Humanity had not conquered the stars. It had earned its place among them. And in the quiet that followed, the universe understood something new. Silence was no longer a sign of weakness. It was the sound of a species that had proven its strength, not by how hard it could hit, but by how wisely it chose not to. The stars watched, and for the first time in a long time they felt safe.